Lame.
That's a fact.
You need to keep working on your dad jokes.
Lame.
No, these are people with poor sense of humor. That's what it is.
Hey, well, if you want some sense of humor, what's the longest word in the English dictionary?
Supercalifragilisticexpialidocious.
No, smiles, because there's a mile between each S.
Okay, we're good, Commissioner.
Okay, yeah, we on now.
Sense of humor. What's the longest word in the English dictionary?
Supercalifragilisticexpialidocious.
No, smiles, because there's a mile between each S.
All right. So Jeff, you got
Okay, he win with Lane.
I think some of us may have missed our calling.
Please don't tell us what that is. You ready, Jeff?
Yeah, we're ready.
Okay. Good morning, everybody, once again. We appreciate you all coming to this blight litter control meeting. I would think Commissioner Weems and I co-chairs this meeting, and I think we're making great progress, just learning exactly what we're doing in the government. This morning I had a little outline here. If everybody don't mind, I can share what it is. We have Mr. Campbell Vaughn here. Commissioner Fenoy was generous enough for some time to bring him in and try to look at some of this weed control. And I think in that particular time, he was talking about the Johnson grass in particular. And I decided to make contact with him the other day just to talk about a broader look at all the ranges of grass that as we demo properties, how we can control that until a structure is put back on it. So as a result of that, he's going to be here today to be one of our presenters and be our first presenter. Our other two presenters is going to be from 311, Ms. Kelly Walker, who's the manager in 311. And with that being said, because 311 received all of these calls that eventually, if nothing doesn't get done, our constituents begin to call us and let us know how long they've been calling 311 and what has been the result. And I think all of us as elected officials in particular know that ultimately 311 is not to blame. They just take the calls. But they're the ones, our citizens be holding responsible for no response to their request. And last but not least is Miss Adika Anderson. I'll treat Miss Anderson to keep it straight. Ms. Anderson, can't go wrong with just Ms. Anderson. And from Keep Augusta Beautiful, and she will share with us about the education component that she puts out there going across the community. I think all those things are important as we begin to put these things in place. And last but not least, from Mr. Lonnie Wembley from the Environmental Services Department, I think all of y'all may have the list of the demo properties that he put out, that he sent us out some time ago. And I think Ms. Bonham might have shared that list with you, or she intended to share that list with you by the time we get there at the last presentation. I'll make some comments around that. Commissioner Williams, anything you'd like to say before we start here, bring out?
No, everything's good. We keep it moving.
All right, so Mr. Vaughn, good morning, sir.
Yeah, good morning to y'all. Thank y'all for having me.
Yes, pleasure for you coming out this morning. So you can go ahead and do what you need to do. Were you able to provide the slides, and Ms. Bonner, were you able to get this up?
I've got them on my computer. I guess I just need to share my screen.
Okay, so can you help us with that, Jeff?
Yes, he has access to share now.
Okay, all right, sir. Well, you can go ahead, Mr. Vaughn. It's your floor.
Let's see. All right, y'all can see that slide?
Not yet.
Right. Everybody just asked me to talk. They don't usually ask me to share the screen. Share screen.
Then it should ask you which screen you want to share.
Let's see.
Which application.
Here we go, right here.
That's working.
All right, y'all got it now?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so essentially, I spend a lot of time on the roads and hear a lot about what's been going on with a lot of these lots, and I know there's a big concern for them. And I do a lot of my extension work in weed control, and it can be on for weeds and on soccer fields up to any kind of complete annihilation of weeds wherever. So I wanted to put this together, and y'all feel free to stop me anytime. It's a short presentation, talk I talked to some experts in the field and kind of found a method I think would work best for trying to take care of these lots. So we've got a weed specialist. His name is Patrick McCullough. We've worked on a lot of different projects with the Board of Education and with the Recreation and Park, and had a lot of success doing weed control, which managed mowing times a significant amount. And essentially the sprays that we have incorporated have saved the equipment cost and labor cost pretty significant. So we worked out, kind of went through some of the lots, some of the weeds that would possibly be in any of these lots, and came up with a formulation that would be fairly safe to spray in potentially semi-residential neighborhoods, that would provide good control over the existing weeds, as well as, you know, some potential long-term chemicals that can keep some of the other weeds from popping back up. So these are just a few lots that I've just kind of hashed out a little bit and took some pictures of them. This one is, as you can see, is on 12th Avenue. Kind of some typical lots that are there. Usually they seem to be about less than a quarter acre, an eighth of an acre. That would be one that would be abandoned. This one is a series of lots over on Hicks Street that was owned by a different group of folks. You know, it's a little bit overrun, kind of difficult to get into. I believe that one is in that's District 1. Another one, this one actually is owned by the land bank. It's not as bad as some of the other ones, but kind of gives you some, you know, something. Obviously there was a house there before, and it's going to have to get maintained one way or another. If it's for abandoned properties or land bank properties, it's going to, you know, usually falls back on the city to make that happen. So what I've said was most lots are less than a quarter of an acre. The ideal thing to do is, if we can find a way to mow them first, come back in with a prescribed herbicide solution that I've come up with. Spray it within a week to 10 days is ideal. What happens is that you cut it off, the plant kind of recoups a little bit, and then will starts growing actively again, and it takes on the chemicals a lot, which ends up in the root system, which eventually kills it. And the solution that I've got should last from 8 months to a year, pretty much knock down, I'd say 85 to 90% of the weeds with the concoction that we've come up with. But what you'd have to have your upfront costs on it would be is a 200-gallon sprayer. It's got basically a hose. It's on a reel. It's a retractable. You'd need an automatic retraction thing if you really wanted to go from lot to lot to lot, as many lots as we've got. 150-foot hose is kind of standard with that size. Preferably a trailer model, just so you wouldn't have to have a truck dedicated to it. But you know, that's up in the air. If you can find a available truck, you can put those in the bed of the truck. They're all gas powered. And a new one I figured would be about $7,000. That's about a pretty good estimate. You may be able to have to spend a little bit more. You may be a little bit less, but that's probably what upfront cost, what a good one would be. You know, those things can cause some trouble from time to time, so it's good to have a nice one there, especially when you're sending folks out. An applicator would be one applicator that would go to the lots after they've been mowed. You have to have a Georgia commercial applicators license. That's part of the Department of Agriculture for the state of Georgia. So somebody'd have to have that test. I'm sure engineering people have some of those. I don't know, but one or two that may have them in the Recreations and Park group. And a good applicator could probably do 10 to 15 lots a day. Like I said, most lots are an acre or less. My thoughts on dealing with mowing and labor would be that a two-man crew probably could take 45 minutes to do a lot. That includes travel time, and maybe $100 a lot per, maybe $125. That would be equipment costs and what have you. Obviously, the quicker you can move from lot to lot, the difference, the more you can get out of your dollar on that. The more you have to pack up on a trailer and move equipment. It takes up a lot of time. multiple ways you can do the stuff. It would either be with a bush hog and a tractor or some kind of heavy duty 360-degree mower, but definitely gonna have to have some spraying weed eater folks out there. So definitely be at least 2 people out there. Sprayer, just for the spraying, the chemicals would be about $15 per lot is kind of how I broke it down. And maybe about $25 cost of salary, maybe in the use of the equipment there. So, $45, $50 for per lot to spray it. That's just an estimate off of what I've done in the past with, working with the Board of Education. These are the chemicals that I was going to think about using. It may not make much of a difference to you, but the glyphosate is a generic Roundup. It is a non-selective herbicide, which means that it's going to kill most everything that it touches. That is going to be a little more tender. The next one is a triclopyr, which I call a brush killer. It's going to take care of a lot of the more woody type things, your poison ivies, your wisterias, your shrubby China berries. Both of those will work real well on that Johnson grass that we've discussed in the past. The next chemical would be diamine, which is a pre-emergence. And what that does is that actually will keep weeds from, you get a lot of annual weeds and seeds that just kind of pop up and they get blown in. If it's from the road, if it's from the, yes, sir.
Yeah.
Keith is here for a laptop. Did you arrange something with him to pick up?
No. He asked if he'd come in today. I told him he could come and get it.
Okay.
Jeff, you can hear you all.
The laptop?
No, sir.
So you're not going to come down here and get the laptop?
No, sir, because I'm in hold on. Sorry about that.
It's all right. So the prodiamine is a pre-emergence. What it does is when weeds blow in, which if there's any piece of dirt anywhere, God's going to put a seed on it and it's going to bloom and bud out. And what that'll do is kill the seed as soon as it germinates. It will really eliminate a lot of the stuff that's going to pop back up. So essentially, we are killing most everything. I think you could probably get 85% control 8 months to maybe a year before you'd have to respray it again. Certainly things wouldn't get too big and you wouldn't ever have to come back in and mow it. It'd be easy to come back in and spray the chemicals. The last item on there I said is a non-ionic surfactant. All of that does is help these chemicals stick to the leaves. Most of the leaves on these plants are real waxy, so it breaks the wax down on the leaves and helps the chemical get into the plant and makes the herbicides a whole lot more effective. This is just kind of what the chemicals do. I just described that to you. They're contact killers. They have to touch the leaf on the plant. They're not something that if you spray it on a tree, it's going to harm the tree. It goes through the leaf of the plant. So it's going to have to get done during the growing season. So fall, when plants are moving energy down into the root system is the ideal time to do it, because it's taking all the energy, moving it down there to store carbohydrates, and it'll take that chemical with them. And ideally, we're trying to kill the root systems on these plants. Spring is another good time to do it because the plants are coming out of dormancy. They're not moving really quickly, and they've got new fresh growth leaves on there, and it can really knock them back. But fall is a little more ideal. Of course, you can do it anytime during the growing season. Couple of stipulations. It's good for the plants to be hydrated. In other words, if it's rained within the 3 days before, it works a little bit better because plants, when they move and are actively growing, absorb the chemicals. If it's in a drought, it just doesn't work very well. Not that we've had any problem with drought lately. So, and then the other things I've mentioned to you before there. My opinion on my experience is that the spraying is a lot less costly and dangerous. You get in these lots and you're seeing, fence posts and cinder blocks. You're going to tear some equipment up. A lot of places you're not going to be able to see where you were, and finding the right equipment to mow can be pretty challenging. I know from how these sprayers work, somebody can pull up right into a driveway at one of these places, use that hose and be able to cover the entire lot, almost standing in the lot, so you're really not moving around. It should reduce the cost. You shouldn't have to you mow it once. I don't think you really have to mow it again. It'd be easier to come back in and spray it. It probably costs you less just to respray it. And I think, yeah, like I said, continuous spraying would probably eliminate the mowing. That's pretty much it for me on what I just thought about doing on that one. So, anybody have any questions for me?
Any questions, anybody?
I got one.
Okay.
Yes, sir. Commissioner Fennoy, go ahead.
Yeah.
Mr. Vaughn, take it down if you.
Mr. Vaughn.
Yes, sir.
Could we use spraying in our retention ponds?
You can do that, but you have to be a little more cautious about that. And a lot of the reasons why I decided to use these chemicals where they are is they're safe for flat lots. You have to be a little more cautious because all of the chemicals that you spray have a label on them that comes from the EPA. The EPA states whether you can put a chemical on anything that's going to run into water or be on the edge of the water. So we can mix the chemicals up to spray retention ponds, but you have to be cautious about which ones are labeled for aquatic use or on the edges of aquatic stuff. We have formulations. Usually the chemicals are a little more expensive, but not bad expensive. Maybe $5 or $10 an acre more expensive.
Okay. And my next question is that in our canal, there's a lot of growth and weeds and stuff growing in the canal, which
Right.
Prevents the flow from being a smooth. Could some of these be used? Would it be environmental safe to use some of these?
Yes, we do have a lot of chemicals that are environmentally safe for actual water stuff. We recommend them to a lot of pond owners when they get overrun with weeds, especially for fishing ponds and stuff. But there's no reason you can't use these chemicals over the top of we see water hyacinth and water lilies and some other things there. They're even doing some of that with some of the exotic invasives that are up at the lake, and they're actually spraying them with airplanes up there. So there's plenty of stuff to do it. The logistics and the safety measures you have to be a little bit extra careful about. The canal has a deal to where you can't use a gas-powered engine on there, so that limits you to electric engine. Not many people have engines. Trolling motors, it's tough to carry 100 gallons of water with a trolling motor. So you can skin that cat, or you might have to find some different creative ways to make it work.
Okay, and if we spray a lot, that will kill the weeds. But say 6 months later, somebody wants to buy that lot, put a house on it, and grow some grass.
So the chemicals are not soil active, and that's the reason why I chose those. We've got other chemicals that can wipe out all the vegetation for a long time. These chemicals we have are not going to stay in the soil. The prodiamine, which is the pre-emergent, is one that will last 6 months, 3 to 6 months to keep some of the annual weeds down. It's not going to make that big of a difference in the long run on putting, if somebody buys a lot, tears a house down, by the time all the construction and the landscape's done, all that stuff would be worn off. But I'm not worried at all about there being any long-term residuals on the lot for use of these chemicals.
And I guess my next question would be to Commissioner Hassan, is that if we move forward with the spraying program on vacant lots, are we gonna do that in-house, or would we hire a company to do that?
Well, I would think for a while we'll let the experts do it. I know at least for a couple of years I would recommend the government, based on what we're trying to accomplish, and we want persons who have experience to do that, unless he doesn't have the manpower and they can train someone. But my personal suggestion would be to stick with the experts for at least a couple of years to get a handle on it.
Mr. Hassan, I just wanted to let you know when we worked with the Board of Education, we kind of did a different project. And they have about 600 acres of open space, and we were trying to kind of suppress the Bahia seeds. Bahia pops up and you've got to mow it constantly. And we spray a chemical on most of their properties to be able to keep those seed heads from popping up. It usually will last about 8 to 10, maybe 12 weeks if the weather cooperates. They contracted all of that stuff out and found a pretty reasonable rate per lot. It ended up saving them $1 gazillion, and it didn't have to deal with the headache. The biggest thing that I would say would be the logistics of getting the lots mowed effectively to where you could drive equipment from lot to lot to lot and not have to load it on a trailer and then have those people come back in. If somebody can manage the logistics of it, doing a contract would be pretty easy to do, because it's not overly.
Is that with yourself, or is that contract with yourself or another entity?
No, the Board of Education contracts with, I forget what the name of the folks are, but they're pretty good sprayers. There's a few of them around that do a good job, but it's not real precision spraying, so it's pretty easy. It's basically hooking something up to a hose. The hose mixes the chemical for you, and it's okay if you get a little bit extra.
Okay, well, let me ask you another way then. Let me ask you what Commissioner. No, I'm sorry. Commissioner Noah, he asked the question, will we do it in-house? So based on the chemicals that you showed us this morning, if we wanted to consider, we have some persons who've already have some sensibility about doing some sensor spraying. Could you train them with the chemicals that you showed us this morning? Yeah,
that's not a hard thing to do. I can help them. And the big thing is they got to have a commercial pesticide license. And my guess is Malik's got plenty of folks that have that because they do spraying. Parks and Recreation only has one person that does all of their spraying. And of course he could spray all day, every day, all year round, just for as much stuff as he has to do. We work a lot. But you're going to have to find somebody that's pretty knowledgeable, has that pesticide license, and is willing to do it. It's not hard work, but it's, he'll certainly have some interesting challenges, but it's not hard. It's not hard at all. And I'd be more than happy to help them, work their way through it. But you're certainly going to have to designate somebody to logistically do it, because it does need to get sprayed within a couple of weeks after that's been mowed.
Thank you. Commissioner Renaud, answered your question?
It does.
Okay. Commissioner Brandon Garrett and Commissioner Williams. Marion Williams.
Thank you, Commissioner. This question is also for Campbell, and I appreciate the presentation you've done so far. Excuse me. My question would be in regards to the constant spraying. I'm a beekeeper, so I'm a little hesitant to support constant spraying of weeds and stuff that are out there. If there was a way that we could come cut these lots, spray them, and then maybe overseed with wildflowers, what would the maintenance on that be afterwards?
Well, I hear where you're going on that. These are herbicides that we're spraying, not any kind of insecticides. Sometimes we can add insecticides if there's issues with fire ants, and we do that. The cemeteries and that kind of stuff, we'll do that as an additive because it's a simple add-in. I wouldn't worry a bit about any pollinators because of the herbicides that are spraying in terms of effect on that. As for coming in and doing wildflowers, I mean, it's a pretty thought or whatever, but essentially you're mowing, you're putting something else out there. It's just adding one extra weed to the thing. You may get some pretty flowers off of them, but in the long term, you're going to spend way more money. You're going to have trees grow up faster than they are. And technically you're supposed to burn or mow wildflowers every year anyway. And I think the big thing that everybody's trying to do is eliminate the problem of having weeds in these lots. And I think it's a better solution to just spray them down.
You're muted, Commissioner.
No, that helps answer my question. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Commissioner Marion Williams.
Yeah, I enjoyed the presentation and I understand a little bit about spraying. I got a bigger problem than that though. When we don't clean the lots before we talk about spraying, we leave a lot of vegetation like young trees, and we call them shrubbery, but they're really just wild trees. And we'll cut around them, and then they grow, and then it begin to be a bigger problem. So before we get to spraying, have we ever considered about replanting a different type grass? You know, I hear people talk about the Johnson grass. Well, the Johnson grass in my lifetime has always been tall, been growing fast. But, you know, when we look at our entryways, have we thought about planting other type grass that don't grow as tall, that don't work as much as cutting, easier to cut, look a lot better? Have we considering that? Will be my first question.
Mr. Williams, I'm sorry. I like what you're saying about that, and you could possibly put a centipede grass down there. I just think it's one other thing to maintain. I think if you kept it, my opinion is it seems to be the logistics that it takes just to get a lot done. It's hard enough to get to the lots, and as many of them as we have, it'd be nice to be able to plant a grass, but you know, if you plant grass, you're still going to have to maintain it. You want to eliminate Johnson grass because it will take over. And I know what you're saying about those medium-sized trees. Those trickle pear will take care of a lot of that, but you may have to come in and localize spraying on some of those trees and whatnot. The big thing is, I would say, is to get it down to the base as much as you can, and then you can take care of the shrubbier type stuff as it comes. As for planting grass, I think it's a bigger expense than what you want to take on.
Well, and it was just a question, and you know, I'm open to hear both sides. I mean, I just know that we talked about. I look at other cities. You know, we've been compared to North Augusta, and just in Columbia County this week, riding, looking at how things are done differently. We got some old properties, we got some overgrown properties, and it's going to take time to get them. I get all of that. But what bothers me is that the stuff that we done go back to the same way. We're not getting any better. I can see, you know, we got 20 more, but the first 20, we know we got them straight. We don't get nothing straight. And I'm tired of spending my wheels, so to speak, or spending money, so to speak, and not getting anything done. Just this week, over our Riceboro Road behind Mount Calvary Baptist Church, we went in there and we cleaned up. We did all this stuff, and they left wasn't a fence, wasn't even a piece of fence, because it was some wire that had been there for years. Vegetation had grown into this wire. If you go by there today, it's a young tree now, and we left it. Had it been my lot, and I need to clean it off, I would have cleaned everything off. I wouldn't have had it. I could have went on the property with a lawnmower. Now we say we can't get there because we left the vegetation, or we left the shrubbery, which wasn't no shrubbery. It's been 200 years since shrubbery was on it, and it just done got wild because birds have planted more trees than we are planted in there. But we're not taking this thing seriously enough, in my opinion, to know that we're going to keep doing the same thing over and over and over, unless we make a difference and then inspect what we expect. So the grass planting was something that I thought about, that with the Johnson grass in our entryway. You can't plant grass everywhere, and we can't mow it all. We got to make a lot, in my opinion, we got to make a lot acceptable and attractive enough for somebody to want to build on it. Most of our lots, you look into them, you look into the bushes, and you think that's a small lot because the vegetation stopped your eyesight. When you look into it, you only go so deep. If you go to the back of the lot and look forward, you really can tell what size it is. And I complained about this several times before. We'll cut around some stuff and leave the vegetation all around, and nobody wants to go in there because it looks like it's not very exciting. So planting grass was just a thought. I just thought it.
Mr. Williams, I've spent a lot of time on the road in Richmond County, and I hear what you're saying. One of the things that I'd like to consider y'all thinking about is if you take it into different different categories. We've got abandoned lots. There's one way that I can treat those, and I think the solution that I did the presentation for is it is a good solution for that. But there again, I also drive down Calhoun Expressway on the way home and get off on those exits, and all those pretty shrubs and stuff have been overgrown with Johnson grass. We can treat that Johnson grass a different way. I mean, those things different way with a different chemical to eliminate the Johnson grass and just have grasses and make them look prettier. So if you treat the roadways a little bit different than you treat the abandoned lots, and then of course the entryways with in medians and stuff a different way, you know, you can skin that cat a bunch of different ways. But from my standpoint is, if you approach each individual, you know, you take that as abandoned lots, roadways, and medians, and divide it up, we can come up with a solution for each of those. And you know, if you found somebody that was internal that was willing to spray all those, because like Parks and Recreation has somebody that's full-time spraying, and they do a lot of good and they do a lot of stuff, and he barely has enough time to keep up. If engineering and the land bank together with, you know, maintenance and all of those different folks and came up with one guy solution wise, we can do a lot of amazing stuff just with simple chemical solutions, and save ridiculous amounts of time on labor and moving equipment around. And when just for instance, we on Calhoun Expressway right there at Eve Street, they mowed that stuff the other day and it looked really good. But I know in 3 weeks that Johnson grass is going to be back up neck high again. And so you just keep spraying it, keep spraying it. Why not? I mean, keep mowing it. You spray it one or two times, and you're back down to good grass, and it's a pretty roadway. You're not doing it over and over and over. And I think, you know, adding those two things together would make a big difference in the long run. It may cost you a little bit more up front, but in the long run, it's going to save you huge amounts of money. It costs a lot more to run a piece of equipment than it does to do any of these kind of sprayings.
Well, thank you, Mr. Vaughn. We appreciate you very much. And as we go through this conversation and begin to come to some conclusions, the commission as a body, I'm sure we'll be reaching back out to you to see what direction that we're actually going. But definitely you were helpful this morning, and we look forward to having you back in at some point in time and we're making a decision, not necessarily the subcommittee, but the commission as a body. So thank you very much for your time this morning.
I'm glad to be here. Anything I can do to help.
All right, thank you, sir. Next, ladies and gentlemen, is going to be Ms. Kelly Walker. She's a 301 manager. And I think it was important basically because many times we see what we see along the roadways, the things you were talking about, Commissioner Williams, whether it's potholes, whether it's things that we see along the way, overgrown grass and what have you. But Ms. Kelly and her team is on the front line in terms of many times receiving those calls, and as a result of the concerns that we all have right before us. So as a result of that, she's going to give us some insight in terms of exactly how many calls she feels on a daily basis, what those calls look like, and what are some of the resolutions that she sees happen in a timely manner, and some of those things that doesn't happen in such a timely manner. And as a commission moving forward, what can we potentially do about that? Ms. Walker, you can go ahead, please.
Good morning, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Awesome. Are you guys seeing a full screen, or you're seeing my PowerPoint?
PowerPoint.
Okay.
Not a full screen. There you go. I see you now.
Hold on 1 second. I'm gonna go and change the setting right quick. Right. So let me try this again here. Okay. Are you able to see the PowerPoint presentation now? Full screen?
No, we see you. Still see you.
Still see me.
I mean, I think we saw the PowerPoint. I just don't know what you said what a full screen or not. We saw it initially. I don't know exactly what you meant.
Okay. 1 second. Are you guys still seeing me?
No, that is.
Okay, so I'll go from here. Good morning. I bring you greetings from the Augusta 311 office. I will be presenting a brief overview of 311, some of our 2019 and 2020 statistics, and then I will go into talking about how 311 approaches overgrowth in Richmond County. As most of you know, our mission is to present citizens, residences, our businesses and visitors with transparent access to all of Augusta information and services. We try to do it as timely as possible and in an efficient manner while providing the best customer service possible. It's what Central Services likes to call red carpet service. So a little bit about what 311 is. We are a non-emergency government call center. We are a great source of government information. Our office hours, we're open Monday through Friday, 7 a.m. until 7 p.m. We like to consider ourselves the conduit that links the citizens to resources and city services. Pretty much I like to call 311 like the ER. We don't actually resolve anything, but we can triage you and get you to where you need to be to hopefully get the request for city services handled. We do work with departments to improve their operations and internal processes. And we also provide statistics to the administration as well as the commission as needed. Some of our annual statistics, in 2019, 311 took over 107,000 calls. That's just the calls that hit our center. Of those numbers, we only answered 72,000. So a lot of the commissioners, sometime I'll receive email communication and they'll say that they're call 311, they're not able to receive us, or they'll get routed to Columbia County. We do have an office of 8 employees, to include myself, 5 call takers that actually are dedicated to taking calls all of the time. The abandonment rate, 35,000 calls were not answered in 2019. And as you can see, we're at over 97,000 calls, and we're at the end of September. So we are going to definitely pass that number from last year. Of those, this year we handled over 60,000 calls, with 37,000 calls being abandoned, meaning that we did not have an agent that was available and they got tired of holding, so they hung up. Our average talk time is a little over 3 minutes per call, which is okay. We try to be under 3 minutes, but that's something that we continue to work to improve. Now, even though the main way that you contact 311 is by phone, we do have other channels, and I'll talk about them briefly. 2019, our emails, over 600 emails came into the office. Our citizen web portal received over 4,200 requests, and our mobile app just over 800. In 2020, you can see that our email numbers doubled for this year. Of course, people are not going out as much with the current pandemic and COVID conditions. A lot of people are wanting to do business by phone instead of actually coming in person. Our citizen web, as well as our mobile app, we are definitely expecting to surpass the numbers that we had in last year. So that just talks a little bit about the statistics for 311. Now I would like to switch a little bit and talk about 311's approach to overgrowth. Pretty much there's 5 different areas. One of them I've kind of lumped into one. So really 4 different areas. By far, environmental services is the most of what we do when it comes to overgrowth. And these are your vacant lots or your vacant property. And that's just a picture, showing, of course, I know you guys know exactly what that looks like. But that is the most of what we do. And I'll show you those numbers in a second as far as 2019 numbers for vacant lots or for environmental services. Secondly, our engineering department, these are your ditches, your ponds, your sidewalks, and your creeks, those public right-of-ways. That is what we're receiving calls on. And constituents are wanting to know the time frames or why is it taking so long? I put in this request last year and it still hasn't been done. So we continue to try to find ways to work with the department to hopefully decrease the amount of time that it takes for us to provide the citizen with a response. But of course, it is met with many challenges. Our third and the third largest area is our code enforcement office, which is a division of planning and development. Of course, that is our occupied property. It takes a little bit longer when you're dealing with code enforcement, because a lot of times they receive the 15-day or the 30-day letters, and then in some cases it ends up in court. And so you'll see that those types of cases have a longer lag time before they're actually completed. And then finally, we have our central services and our recreation and parks department, and they pretty much maintain the county-owned facilities. A lot of constituents, they say, well, there's ordinance that are in place in Augusta that you want me to maintain my property. Well, when is the city going to get out here and cut this building or cut this recreation center and park? So those two departments work together to address those type of concerns. So when 311 receives these requests, we triage the inquiry, either it's by phone, email, web, or mobile. It is assigned to the appropriate department. That department is responsible for validating that request. Yes, I am responsible for taking care of it. And then the appropriate work is assigned as needed. This here just shows some of the annual statistics from 2019, with environmental services by far surpassing any of the other departments. A lot of that, even though you see that 31,000, a lot of that is your trash collection, your cart replacements, your missed pickups, as well as your vacant lot cuts. Then you see central services and engineering. I think engineering is our second largest department, followed with central services, and then you'll see code enforcement in there. I would like to mention, I know that the IT department did give a presentation a couple of weeks ago about the My Augusta 311 app. I wanted to take an opportunity to mention this app. We are rolling it out on mid-October. It's going to be released to the public. It's going to give citizens a way to take pictures and send those requests directly to the department. Also, it's going to be a way for the department to actually respond directly back to that citizen. So we're definitely excited about that. But with new technology comes more responsibility, because of course we're being more transparent. And if these requests continue to sit and they're not addressed, of course it looks bad for the city of Augusta. This slide here talks about utilizing 311 data. And it says, better use of 311 data can improve our ability to make data-driven decisions. That will hopefully have a positive impact on Augusta. In a minute, the next slide will actually show you in detail some work that our GIS department has put together as it relates to a district breakdown, the types of requests, the status of those requests, and also how long they've remained open, or how long it took to complete. And this is the actual slide here. It is what GIS is calling the hub for government information. And we're wanting to push this. I don't think it's got the attention that it needs, or it's definitely very beneficial. But the most important part of this is the department's responsibility in making sure that this information is up to date and valid. I'll click here now, hope it'll work. And actually, if it doesn't, in closing, I'm going to show you guys one other thing. If I can bring it up. Are you still able to see my screen?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. All right, so I'm going to click on District 2. I'm going to give it a second to update. And if you noticed here, did you guys see the screen change?
Yes.
So in District 2, it's showing that within the last 30 days, there was 12 new requests for illegal signs. For the year-to-date numbers are 313. Our environmental services system, they use an LMO system where that information has to be fed. So I actually have those numbers that I wrote down. For the month of September, they received over 270 vacant lot requests, and year-to-date is over 2,000. Actually 2,200 requests just for vacant lot cuts. Talks about our abandoned vehicles, overgrown vegetation, illegal dumping. And if I were to go down and click on the next district, let's say maybe District 5, and I'll give it a second to update. me try District 3 and see if it'll update. Okay, have you guys seen the numbers change on your side?
I don't think it did. I'm not sure. I don't think it did.
Okay.
I don't think it did either.
Okay. I'm gonna try one more. Well, pretty much you guys get the picture here. Our GIS department, they are still working on this, but when they presented this application, it was last year. I know that the Marshal's office, they provided some great useful and some very useful information that's on here as well as it relates to what they do. I don't think so. But as you can see, it has that map there. It actually allows you to zoom in. I can just get this out of the way. There we go. I can see. And if you wanted to look at a certain area, you could, or concentrate on the type of request. But this is the type of data, this is the type of information that we need to make readily available to our commissioners, as well as the administration. But again, it's important that the data remains up to date and is useful, because of course, bad data in, you get bad data out. And I'll take any questions that you may have at this time.
Thank you, ma'am. Ms. Kelly, my first question, anyway, thank you, ma'am. You can take the screen down if you don't mind.
Uh-huh.
Okay. Unless my colleagues need to leave it up then in terms of their question. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am, for the information. What I did see, Ms. Kelly, in 2019, it looks like over a third of your calls, about 33% of them, or 35% of them, I would go so far to say, you were not able to answer. And then when you go into 2020, you looked at almost like about 40% of them you were not able to answer. So, and what happened there, one of them was 3 minutes and 12 seconds in 19, and you had 3 minutes and 17 seconds in 20. Which is a 5-second difference, but your percentages went up in terms of that. But the year's not complete because they could never. So my point is, on average, between those 2 years, we're missing a third of the calls that you're not able to answer. What's our challenge there?
Well, our challenge is the limitations in staffing. Like I said, we only have 5 individuals that are dedicated to taking calls. So if they have if they have sick leave, if they have vacation, sometimes we're only down to 3 employees. When we get that low, myself as well as the office supervisor, we jump in and we try to help. But on average, 311 is seeing over 11,000 calls per month. Definitely the pandemic has caused that amount to increase. How long it will last, we're uncertain, but just this month as well, our tax bills went out. So that, of course, depending on what's going on throughout the city, it may cause those fluctuations in calls as well. Okay.
And so now you had some closing numbers there for cases that came in on certain departments, and how are you able to check that these services have been provided to close these cases?
Sure. So what I do on a monthly basis is I run reports in their back end system. So environmental services, they use LMOs. Our central services department and most departments, they use CityWorks. So I'm in their systems running reports on the day that it was entered and the day that it was closed.
Anybody else got a question, Zan? Commissioner Williams, go ahead, sir.
Yeah, thank you, ma'am, for your presentation again. But I'm more interested in the data that you send to the departments. You don't have any control over when it gets done. But being the 311 and you're being the person that the community is calling on, is there any way of tracking or keeping up with when you send stuff out? It's not, I don't think it's your job, I don't know, to follow up with that. And I know the constituency wants you to follow up, wants to get that done. For instance, if there's a problem with a pothole and you report it, is your hands tied from that point on, or you have to wait until it gets fixed to know you don't recall it in? I'm trying to understand how the system is working, because that sounds like there's a lot of problems there with the system itself. If you get these calls and people calling you continuously because it hadn't been done, but you got no way of getting the department to do it. So run that process by me. Once you turn that information into the department, what happens after that?
Sure. So once the information is submitted to the department, they create the work, the back end work that needs to be completed, and it remains in their as their responsibility. And then once the status is updated, if it's closed or canceled or a project is created, then information is sent back to our office and we can update the citizen. If they choose to communicate via email, the email is automatic and that will send them notification. Some people want to actually receive a phone call, so we do a lot of call outs to give updates. We do also have reporting in various systems where if it's over 30 days or 60 days, whatever that threshold where let's say if it takes a pothole generally 30 days to be completed. If it's over that 30 days, there's a report that you can run that shows at these addresses, these potholes are outstanding. There again, it still is up to that department to make sure that those are completed in a timely fashion.
Okay, so after the report is really out of your hands, then it just depends on the department when they can get to it, or when they got the manpower or the tools to do it with. But how long that normally lasts? I mean, give me a time span on the longest time span that for instance, somebody reported something and it took them 2 or 3 months. I'm just trying to figure out where because there's a breakdown somewhere. You're doing your job, and in fact, the more you do your job, the more calls you're gonna get. I mean, it's just like anything else. But my point is, if there's a reason that something we can do, and there's a reason that the work is not getting done or not being followed through, so to speak, it's like a return call. There ought to be somebody in that department ought to give a return call versus 311. 311, the citizen can't call every department. Every department. So if you call a department and report something, and that department ought to have somebody there to get back to somebody and say, look, we understand, we know where that is, we had another complaint on it, and we're working on it. But when you just get it, it's like, well, I told 311, but they didn't do anything, and you did your job.
Well, I believe that if the departments had the resources, then we would see things happen, or we would see a quicker response. Let's say just for example, if we have 2 VACCON machines and one of them is down, that's going to delay their ability to unclog storm drains because now we're working off of one piece of equipment. Also with like the inmate crews, if there's an outbreak and they have to take the inmate crews, then you have to expect that there's going to be a delay in vegetation being cut because now the resources are limited to whatever is working. So that's the conversation that we have with citizens. We try our best to educate them so they can understand what happens internally. But at the end of the day, they just want the job completed. They don't care who does it, what it looks like, just complete it, cut it, close it out.
Trust me, I know firsthand about that. But now when you talk about a machine breaking down or something happening in inmate crews, that's totally different. I'm talking about on a normal basis. And machine breakdown, I mean, naturally, you're gonna be down. But we got too many machines that have been down for too long. And people still, I mean, I'm really passionate about it because I lived this for so many years, and I see it every day, and I sympathize with people who say, I can't get no answer. It's bad when you call a office and get a voicemail from somebody and tell you to push this number to get somebody else, and then you still don't get nobody. So that's one of the challenges, I guess, of being a growing city. But I think
we've done to try to circumvent that, sir, is we have created a callback feature. If they do get tired of holding, they can leave their number, and as soon as one of my agents hangs up the phone, it automatically dials them back. Now, sometimes we do get their voicemail or there's no voicemail set up, so we do have challenges with that. But due to the limited staffing, we did try to put something in place to make sure that we are able to call individuals back if we can't answer them when they call us.
Thank you. Commissioner Brandon Garrett. Commissioner Flynn, I'll see you next after Commissioner Garrett.
Thank you. I guess my question here is, you've mentioned the concerns that we commissioners have told you about, the constituents look at their work orders and it says completed, but yet no work has been done. Is there a way within the system that we can manipulate it to, either show it's in action or to show where it's going instead of it being completed on the 311 side, which is where most of the constituents are going to look on the status?
The system does have some flexibility, and we have, with the launch of the My Augusta app, we've changed that verbiage a little bit. In particular, there's really only one department, and that's engineering, that closes the request, and they work off of work orders instead of keeping the request open. So I think that's what you're referring to. Hopefully, with additional conversation, we can maybe address that and have that department willing to leave that request open. I don't think that we've had that conversation yet. That's my best answer for it. Is the system is built, let's use the system how it was intended versus trying to circumvent it. So yeah, that's my best answer for that. Hopefully we'll address that soon with our implementation.
And, I've called 311 and have gotten sent to Columbia County, and me being in the district that I represent, I'm probably the farthest away from Columbia County than anybody else. So is there a reason why calls get booted over to Columbia County's 311 system?
Sure. So I can't answer that, even though that's something that's managed by our IT department, but I've had that question on a number of occasions, especially recently. We do share a node, which is the 30907 area with Columbia County. So there is a memorandum of understanding where if they receive a call, they'll do a soft transfer and vice versa. Now, what I am seeing now is that calls that originate in 30901, 30906, those are also being sent over to
30815.
30815, yeah. Yep, the Hepzibah area as well. So I'm going to let our IT department, our very capable IT department, look into that issue and try their best to address it. But yes, I have been made aware of it.
We got award-winning IT. We reminded of all the time. Award-winning IT department.
We'll go. Commissioner Garrett, that's your questions there?
Yeah, I'm good.
Okay. Well, Ms. Kelly, for the record, we'll get somebody to reach out for IT to come in at our very next meeting to explain that, because that is very interesting. Because I thought when y'all had that conversation, when you said District 7, my mind said that, well, Commissioner Garrett's on the other side of me. So that shouldn't be happening. If it is, there's a reason for it. So we'll have IT in the next time. So we won't burden you with that, but we'll put them on notice. We'll look for them to share that information with us. Commissioner.
Ms. Walker.
Yes, sir.
You have gotten almost 90,000 calls this year.
I think it was that number, 98,000. Yeah, we're right at almost 100,000.
Okay.
Yeah.
Then you still haven't gotten as many calls as I have about.
Ask him how many he returned.
Yeah. I mean,
That means you need an office here.
But I guess one of my concerns, I got two concerns, Ms. Walker. And my first concern is, what is it that you need, that 311 needs, so that we could answer all of the 311 calls that we get and answer them in a timely manner. And when I get a call about a situation that's going on around their particular property, I ask them, well, have you called 311? And they will say, yes, I've called 311 2 or 3 times. And my second question is, of those 98,000 calls, do you have any way of knowing whether they were calls, whether they were calls about the same issue?
Okay, so to answer your first question, I do believe that we're at the point that we need to review additional staff to support the increased operations, the increased call volume. 311, of course, it was before it was Augusta Cares, and it was only 2 people. So 311 combined with different departments, and there was an office of 7. Since the inception of that department, the office has not grown, but we've steadily increased in our functionality, which is a great thing because I believe in what 311 offers to the city. So to answer your question, I do think that we are at a point where we're capped out on our resources. We are utilizing them, even though we do have the use of our mobile app and our citizen web. Just the culture of Augusta and the nature of where we are, I honestly don't feel that there's some people that are going to take to that. It's great if our younger adults, our college students, if we get them involved and they're using the mobile app. But I know that my mother, my grandmother, they're going to continue to call for what they need. So I think we need to take that into consideration and make sure that we have enough agents here to answer calls. Now, the second part to that is not only do we need to answer the call, but we also need to get to the point where we're holding the departments responsible for responding to these taxpayers. That's what they're ultimately wanting. They want to know whether it's a yes or no, tell me something. And as these requests continue to sit and linger for months and sometimes years, the temperaments flare. And we get a lot of that, and it's okay. It's a part of the job. But at some point, we have to address the real issues, and that's what it is. 1, the limitation of resources, and 2, the departmental accountability for closing some of this stuff out. And your second question, what was your second?
Repeat calls.
The repeat calls, I would probably say 30% are repeat calls.
Okay.
Wow.
Yeah.
But as far as staffing is concerned, do you have a number?
As far as additional staff that we would need?
Additional staffing.
So right now, there's twice a year that I get temps in the office when the tax bill assessments and the tax notices come out. So 2 or 3 is that magical number where we're able to, I don't see more than 2 people waiting in queue at any given time. So if I had to give a number, I would say 3 at the most, but 2 at the minimum. So that's what that number looks like.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions, anybody?
No, sir, I'm sorry. I do have something in closing of my presentation. I just wanted to give you guys, because this meeting was about the overgrowth. And it says, my first question was, and this is just maybe thoughts to, as we conclude this meeting or at some point. 1, how do we work together to address overgrowth in a more timely fashion? Is our current process working? That's a big question. And then what areas do you really cut first? What do you address first? Do you address it based on the date that it was entered? If it's been open the longest, that's what you cut first. Is it the properties that are deemed safety issues? Is that what we address first? Or is it, if it's in an area where work is already being performed, if we got a crew out there, why aren't we cutting this property or cutting that? So I wanted to leave the group with that. And I appreciate you giving me the opportunity to speak with you today. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Walker. And I appreciate you forward those questions that you just said to Ms. Bonner, so we have those for our thought process. Thank you, ma'am, very much. Our next presenter is, I'm gonna stick with Ms. Anderson from Keep Augusta Beautiful. As we know, education is one of the most foremost parts of our, in terms of being able to make changes in terms of keeping Augusta beautiful. Augusta is known as the Garden City, and we're to a point now that we're even questioning ourselves, but we want to see exactly what Ms. Anderson is doing in that regard that can help us, and they can unify all of these efforts from 311 to the demolition, to the grass and everything else. All those things can line up, and we can truly be the Garden City as we would like to be known as, and live up to that mantra at the end of the day. Ms. Anderson, it's on you now.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone.
Good
My
morning.
name is Ed Keisha Anderson. That's how you pronounce my first name. And I am the program manager for Keep Augusta Beautiful. I just wanted to share with you all today some information about what we have going on and how we're trying to help change Augusta. Okay. So this was a presentation that we actually gave to the commission back in January 16th of this year when we did our litter workshop. It was just a brief presentation just to kind of give you guys an idea of what Keep Augusta Beautiful is and where we stand as far as our organization. So we are a community action organization. That's a government entity that engages, educates, and coordinates public and civic community efforts around recycling, litter prevention, and beautification. So basically that means we want to get the public involved. We want to make sure that everyone, not only the government, but also the citizens and our business partners are all in this together so that we're working together to take back our city and make it the city that we know it can be, and that it really should be. Secondly, we are an affiliate of Keep America Beautiful, whose pillars are the cornerstone for our program. And those pillars are recycling, litter prevention, beautification. So these are some of the things that we do throughout the county or have done throughout the county since we started back in 2018. We provide public education for adults and school curriculums. We do a lot of public engagement with recycling events and creating different opportunities for citizens to get involved with recycling. As far as litter prevention, we also provide education on that with our adults and schools through public engagement and through different school events with their STEAM programs. We also offer community service opportunities for those individuals that want to get involved, and I'll talk a little bit more about those programs later on in the presentation. And we provide litter cleanup opportunities for any publicly owned parcels and right-of-ways throughout Augusta. Our beautification efforts have been kind of lacking in my opinion because we've tried to focus more so on the recycling and the litter prevention because I think that's where we're having the most issues in the county. But we have worked with our STEAM programs to do some flower planting, some tree planting, and working with some other organizations to do some community gardens. So there is a small component of beautification going on, but we really have focused on that recycling and litter prevention. So some of the areas that we're responsible for, which I know this is a lot on this slide, so I won't read all of it, is really just making sure we're getting to the heart of what the problem is. We want to find out why we're having this issue. And at the end of the day, it comes down to it's a people problem. It's not a department problem, it's not a government problem, it's a people problem. Because litter starts with us, literally, you, me, everyone in this county, it starts there. So if we can get to the root of that problem, then we can start to cut down on some of the litter. And we've seen it through different initiatives that we've started in the last couple of years where we've seen improvement. So communities where we've been involved with them and that we're out there with them consistently, we've seen improvement in their communities where there's less litter, there's less recycled contamination coming out of those neighborhoods. So one of the things Keep America Beautiful provided us when we got started was their behavior change model. This model basically tells us how we can connect with our citizens, what we're looking for when we're trying to connect, and how we can help change those behaviors one behavior at a time. Right now, Augusta is probably in phase 2 of this management process. We've gotten the facts, we're doing studies, and right now we want to prioritize those behaviors. So the behavior we're trying to change at the moment is that littering. We need people to understand that it's not just an unsightly trash problem, but it's also a health problem. You know, it affects everyone. You may leave a piece of trash in one area, but the lifespan of that trash that you've littered, it goes beyond that area. It trickles down into our water streams, it contaminates our water, and we drink that. Now, that's not to say anything about our utilities department, because they have a very good water treatment plant. However, that litter just creates more stuff for them to have to treat in our water before we can drink it again. So we want to change that, and we want to get away from people actually littering. So as we move into the third stage of the behavior change model, we start to talk about what we're doing now. We want to figure out what's going on. How can we have written expectations for our citizens to follow? Are we going to enforce those written expectations? What infrastructure do we have to even enforce that? So we're at that point now where it's time to start putting some words to what we found, to put information behind the studies that we've conducted over the years. So what we found, 2018, we conducted our first community appearance index study and our first cigarette litter study. And in 2019, we conducted a follow-up. There was a 40% increase in cigarette litter in 2019 as compared to 18. That means we're just with cigarette litter alone, we have a lot of work to do. We also had a recycle contamination rate of about 80 to 85%. Now, that was an empirical study that was conducted at our recycle transfer station of one of our neighborhoods here in Augusta. That's huge. With that amount of contamination, there is nothing we can do but take that contaminated product to the landfill. We can't recycle it because none of our partners will even accept that level of contamination. So we worked with one of our neighborhoods and we did recycle bin audits for a whole month. We actually went out to their neighborhood, opened every recycle bin, and we looked to see what was in it, what was causing the contamination problem, where was the breakdown in communication. And we left them notices to tell them what was wrong in their bin and how they could correct it. We had the opportunity to speak with some neighbors. Some conversations were good, some were not. But you know, what can you expect when you're going through people's trash? So that still opened the door for us to be able to communicate with them and to get them, you know, thinking about what they were putting in that recycle bin. And over the course of that month, we were able to see a 10% decrease in their contamination rate. Now, had we been able to go back out and continue working with them, I think we could have gotten them down even further. However, if you're going out for a month, going to check recycle bins, that takes a lot of resources. It takes a lot of staff time, and it's kind of impossible to continue to do. On our end, it was a little impossible for us because at the time there were only two of us. And I enlisted the help of Ms. Becky Paget and her crew of code enforcement officers to assist us, but they're even limited in their resources. So that's another thing that we have to look at, is the limited resources we have to continue to work with people and to continue to educate them. Some of our other results from our behavior change model from the study we did in 2018 and 19, for that fiscal year, we were able to serve, we had 48,000 volunteer hours served. So those volunteers came out, and some of those are just consistent volunteers that we have through the program. But the volunteer time value that was given back to Augusta was worth over $1 million. So people here want to help, they want to do better, and they want to give back to their community. It's evident just by the benefits of what we were doing throughout our 2018-2019 year. So how did we do it? How did we get that $1 million of volunteer hours? Well, we had a bunch of neighborhood association presentations that we did. We went out, we talked to our neighborhood associations about recycling, we talked to them about litter prevention, and we got them involved with the discussion. It did open a lot of eyes. We got a lot of great feedback from those presentations, and we hope to continue those in the future. One of our biggest programs right now is the Adopt a Spot program, which we also have what we have named the Commercially Kept program. Those programs allow our citizens to adopt a location that is important to them or that is near their home or near their civic group, And they assist us by keeping it clean, letting us know if there's overgrowth or something needs to be done outside of their capabilities. The commercially kept program came about when our business entities down on Broad Street decided they wanted to create a group of businesses that would work together to actually pay for the landscaping of our medians. Right now, we have 2 of those adopted, and they are working together very nicely to ensure that the landscaping is completed every month, and they provide us financial reports of what they're doing. We hope to grow that program. I know we have some areas such as Peach Orchard Road, Windsor Spring Road, a lot of areas, Deansbridge is another one that really could benefit from a program like that. Our citizen volunteer and Great Augusta cleanup programs are where our citizens get together and they can do one-off cleanups. So they may have a group that needs some community service hours, or they just want to volunteer and help out. These programs are great for that because they allow them the free resources like grabbers, gloves. We provide hand sanitizer now with masks and gloves to make sure that everybody's staying safe. And the Great Augusta Cleanup Program is more for our neighborhoods where they get involved, where they can request a dumpster for their neighborhood to make sure they're cleaning it up and keeping it free of litter, and making sure that they're not sending things that could be recycled to the landfill, because we're able to kind of separate those things out. We also do recycling, garden, and compost demonstrations that we've had with several of our garden clubs and different school organizations throughout the years. Our youth program is where we work with our STEM and our STEAM programs in the schools. Typically, that's been a one-off. The teacher would reach out to us and we provide them some curriculum and education, and we assist them with helping to start recycling program initiatives within that school. We've increased our reach by doing a podcast called Talking Trash. And then we have, of course, our organization support. So we partner with various organizations, Parks and Rec, Savannah River Keeper, Augusta Continuum of Care, Augusta Arts Council, Finney Nature Center. So we're consistently out in the public, and we're always trying to make sure we're increasing partnerships throughout so that we get the word out about Keep Augusta Beautiful, what we offer our citizens, how we're here to support them, and how they can give back to their communities. In addition, we've also been given some national representation as I serve as one of the members for our Keep America Beautiful Young Leaders Advisory Council and for our Affiliate Diversity and Inclusion Committee, where my biggest my biggest concern is ensuring that we are representing all of our communities and everyone that's involved. So what we need to continue, of course, is administration and commission support. That's always needed. When you guys get behind us, there's no telling where we can go and where we can grow our programs too. We do need increased funding source. Right now, we're okay because it is just myself here. But in order for this program to run effectively and efficiently, I've estimated that the budget should work up to at least a budget of $400,000 a year. And that's to include salaries, that's to include volunteer support materials, and a couple programs that I have in the works that I'm not at liberty yet to discuss because they're not solidified. But I hope the focus of the programs is to help underserved populations like our homeless. We do need larger office space and staff to grow. We haven't included a new outreach coordinator that just started last week and an administrative assistant that should start next month. And our code enforcement staff, while we had them for a very brief moment, was removed. So that kind of set us back a little bit as well. Any questions?
Yes, no, you can. Thank you, ma'am. You mentioned just at the end there, code enforcement. What would you do with code enforcement? Because that's what we're trying to find out now. We got so many places. You Keep Augusta Beautiful. What would code enforcement do for you?
So code enforcement, when you guys think of code enforcement, you're thinking environmental services, doing the vacant lots. You're thinking planning and zoning where they're inspecting occupied properties. For us, code enforcement is simply ensuring that our projects are underway, they're meeting the demands of the public, they are checking these different areas that we're getting complaints about. And as we are putting these groups together, ensuring that we're meeting the demands of that particular area. So for instance, we have a project where we work with the court. Their community service individuals come to us, they can do volunteer projects. Well, that code enforcement officer that we had was supposed to oversee those different areas. And once they were pulled away from that, that project kind of fell by the wayside. Because at this time, it's just me. I can't do everything and be everywhere.
Can you take your screen? Can you take your information down, please?
I'm sorry.
So I can see that my colleagues got any questions. Are there any questions? Yes, Commissioner Marion Williams.
Yeah, thank you, ma'am. You did am I muted or what? No.
Are you fine?
You did an excellent job in enlightening us on Keep Augusta Beautiful. But you talked about several things, and one of them was educating the people and getting the people to take responsibility. And that's a big problem with the inner city for sure. But a lot of us act like we don't see it. And it is in front of our face every day when people are starting to litter and not being educated or not being, have to have a responsibility to take care of their property. I see people on the street that will eat a sandwich and just throw the paper on the ground, just like nothing, and just walk on by. And then you look around, you see the trash and the other stuff on the side of the street, which compound what the person just did, throwing the trash. And I'm remembering I was at McDonald's at 12 o'clock at night, getting a sandwich, and young man walking down the street and just threw the paper up in the air, just like nothing. I mean, those kind of things bothers me because when he look around, he may have some mental issues, I don't know. But when you look around and see the other stuff that's going on in that same area, then he trashing it, people begin to think that the city just don't care. And that's why this code enforcement and cleanup is so important to me, because you may be poor, but you don't have to be nasty. That's a big difference. We got to find a way to hold people accountable, whether it be through fines, whether it be through whatever means to get people to understand we're not going to tolerate that. But if the city of Augusta ain't doing their job, how can we help to keep Augusta beautiful if we're not going to enforce, if we're not going to put any teeth into what we're doing and what you're doing? So I just think that it's important to look at the litter part of it, if nothing else, and get that started and let people know that we're not going to tolerate it. I put out some signs, and you can't put signs on the right of way, but I put out some signs, say on Deansbridge Road. Matter of fact, you mentioned one of those other streets out there, Peach Orchard and a couple more, but I put out some signs saying, please don't litter. It helped a little bit, but don't help very much when people come along and eat a sandwich or drinking a beer or soda and just throw the can on the ground. If you put some equipment out there for them to use, they'll take the equipment. They'll take the trash can. So we've got to find a way to let people know we're not going to tolerate them tearing up and messing up our city. There's going to be some consequences to do that. But I appreciate your presentation. You really helped me a lot understand a little bit more about Keep Augusta Beautiful. Last point though, we take vegetation that we take out of Broad Street and we take to the landfill or we discard it when we could transplant a lot of stuff. I got on to utilities about water. We are so close to the river on Broad Street. That'll be a water fountain, sprinkling waters up and down Broad Street. That makes people calm. That makes people enjoy. That gives you a sense of ownership. We got all kind of vegetation on Broad Street that you can't even see that we ought to be moving around and putting in other places. But we just hadn't got serious, I don't believe, about what we want to do or what we say we want to do with the city of Augusta. But thank you again for your work, and hopefully we get some support for you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Any other commission have a question? Thank you, ma'am, Ms. Anderson. We appreciate that very much, and we will take in consideration about that budget as we move forward. We have more conversations with that about that. But let me ask you a question on that.
Mhm.
What my impression on in terms of that code enforcement person, it seems more that it was working with persons who were assigned to you by the courts. Is that as what you said as well?
That's a portion of it, yes.
Okay, and so how was the courts working with you very well?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and for how long? What was the average time would you have persons under your care who report
So
to
right,
you?
what was anticipated was that code enforcement officer would take one day out of their week where they weren't assisting environmental services with anything additional that they may have, and actually oversee those community service individuals. So depending on how big the area was or where we needed them to go, you know, they would take that day out of their schedule, and that's what they would do.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. Thank you very much. Okay. Okay, fine. I'm gonna kind of wrap this up, if you don't mind, with what I have here about what I got from Mr. Lonnie Wimley in Environmental Services around the demolition. I think some of you may have it as well. It's a list of all the properties that's already been designed to demo, going back, I think it's 18 and 19, if I'm not mistaken, and some in 20. And it comes to over 300 properties, maybe in the range of 350. And when you factor in, let me stick with this list here. And what this list got, what I did is went through the list and identified streets that had 3 or more houses on that street. And what I found out, I was able to group a group of 38 groups that had 3 or more houses on a particular street. Some of them right next to each other, or some just on that street in general. And why I think that was important, because that goes back into play into sometime trying to get a better deal if we're able to. Had not talked to the procurement director yet, but as Commissioner Sides was mentioning last week, if you can have a block of something, then sometimes you can put it on the street by the block and you could potentially cut the cost. Don't know if that's legal or not. Haven't spoken to the procurement director about that, but just out of those 300 and something, there were 38 groups that had 3 or more houses on the very same street. So I thought that was important, that we know that. Now, let me do the total. With the three by on the 350, and when you factor in the 120 some odd houses that Mr. Sherman said that he was anticipating going to court. So let's round that number off to 500. So if we take and round it off to 500, and if we average out each one of these pieces of properties being demoed at about $8,000 a piece, then that means to tear down every potential house, that would cost us $4 million. So that's good to know that we could potentially get those houses down. Then we potentially talk about maintenance and upkeep, but we could potentially do that at a price of $8,000 per house average that we could potentially do it for. Commissioner Williams next, Commissioner. I know that'll make you sit up, Commissioner, for knowing. But go ahead, Commissioner Marion Williams.
Well, no, I just thought about what you talked about the 3 houses on the street. And then I thought about the safety issue. We got some houses that's been on the list a long time. And what I like to know is who decided, who made the decision as to what get tore down when. Because there are a lot of safety issues. There are a lot of people that live around community. There are a lot of homes on the street that nobody's around that still need to be torn down. But how do we determine what get torn down, at one point?
Commissioner, I'm sorry. Commissioner, I think Mr. Wembley is there. He may can answer that question for you. I'm not sure.
Okay.
Because these are houses already that's been designated by the courts to that we can demo. So I think he may can answer that court or somebody in environmental services. Mr. Wembley, can you answer that question?
Sure we can. And good morning, everyone. The first order that we use to take the houses down is based off the priority. in the priority, we look at the safety. So if a house, say for example, you have a nuisance issue, kids going into it, it's an unsafe structure, it's a burned out structure that is about to collapse. So we'll take that property and we'll say, we have to move this one to the forefront to get it taken down. Other than that, if it's a sound structure and it's just standing there, then we just use the priority based off when it was initiated. And if you look at, there's a column that's dated, initiated date. And so that's the primary means for which we take them down based off when they was initiated. Now, if you look on the column, it says status. And again, you use the term initiated, and you see something that says expedite. Well, that's something that has been found about that property that we should move to the front to take down. And again, that might be because it's a nuisance, kids are playing in it. You might have homeless people start to use it as a dwelling or something of that nature. And so it becomes one that we need to expedite to get it taken out of the circulation or out of the population of condemned properties. So
I guess my question is, Mr. Wimley, since there's no department and that it comes under your purview, that you make that decision on who do code enforcement make that decision saying this is the one that need to be done, or there's something that you go by and assess them yourself? How do we come to that?
Without any input from code enforcement, we make the decision on which properties that's going to be coming down. Code enforcement, because they are constantly on the move and looking at properties, they constantly have contact from property owners that may decide they want to try to rehab a house. So they'll have input too, as in, do we put this house on hold to allow them to try to rehab, or something may have happened to that property since they last took it to court, that they seen, that code enforcement personnel has seen that might require us to expedite this property. So they're having input as well as we do. Based off the one individual that I have, we just have to go according to the initiation to go out and look at those properties, make sure we have the asbestos survey, and then put them on a demolition schedule.
Okay, I guess my final question would be that if there's a safety issue involved and children, the house is acceptable, somebody can go in, and it's been sitting there for a number of years. And I'm thinking about one in particular right now, but there's the house was not boarded up. We got some product been boarded up for 20 years. It's supposed to have been a year, if I'm not mistaken. It's supposed to be boarded for a year, but it's been boarded for over 20 years. Nobody did anything with it. We let them board it up. We as a city let them board it up, and then they said they're gonna come back and do something with it in a year's time, and then nothing ever happened. Well, when those homes get boarded up, if nobody inspecting those homes, anybody could be squatters, I guess I call them, going in from one side of another one. But when you got one that's open, that's easily accessible, and children or someone can go in there and be hurt, those are the kinds of property that I think ought to be put at the top of the list. We got a bunch of them, 500, however many there is, there's a lot of them, and you can't get them all. We get that. But those that reign to the level of safety, they ought to be considered first, I think. And I think you just stated that that's what y'all do, but if we don't have a crew to look at them, over 500 houses, and one man can't look at all of those houses to determine what's needed in there. But thank you for that answer.
Yeah, and Commissioner Williams, I think that's a great observation about that, and especially with one person attempting to do that. That's why we're hoping at the conclusion of what we are trying to do here, whatever persons are operating any level of code enforcement, as they see those things, they will inform each other, and it won't be responsible that one person to try to get that information back. Because like you said, that one person can't be everywhere, but anybody who's anyway says have some sense of responsibility to inform the appropriate department or the appropriate entity that we got a potential hazard going on. But that's a great observation. Commissioner Fenoy, you muted. You muted, Commissioner. Okay, go ahead.
am.
Not now. You're all right now.
Okay. You know, one thing that I would like to look at is the impact of putting houses on the property that we take down. You know, you mentioned it would cost about $4 million to tear down those 500 houses. So if we are able to replace that property with 500 new houses, the impact that it would have on our tax base, or if we have some shotgun houses where the lots are not big enough to build a house, well, maybe there's a property owner next to that piece of property that would like to take over that property and add it to here. So I wish there was some way we could look at that financial impact.
Yeah, we can do that down the road, Commissioner. But to your point about neighbors having the right to acquire abandoned properties or whatever that looks like, I think the land bank currently has that going on, and I think in many instances that is already working. It's probably not working in a large mode, but I witness it all the time in terms of neighbors wanting that adjoining property, and that property is in the hands of the city, and then the land bank work with them in acquiring that property. The other thing, what you're saying, that you're absolutely right, and so that would take us out of the business of maintaining those lots that we probably need to try to see as we move in that direction, that we're also hoping that we can get some private-public partnerships, meaning that we own these lots potential for all the ones that we don't try to put back directly. We're hoping that we can get some of the general public who may, private business person who may want to build on that lot, and we can get out of business and give them, that be our contribution to it. We give them the lot, but they give us a timeline and they're going to start building on that particular property. So we can try to expedite these things and have so many, I guess they say, tools in the toolbox to try to rebuild back, and how we do that to get it back on the tax.
But Commissioner Fennard is right. What I think, in my opinion, that we don't try to build something in those properties that's going to be attractive. We want to build the same thing back. He mentioned about some of the lots being too small, and I agree. You got to build a nice situation. You want to grow that nice situation. But if you got a shotgun house next door and you got a 2 shotgun lot, nobody's going to build a nice house next to a shotgun lot, that house that's falling down. So I think we got to understand our culture and what we're dealing with, and how we can start to think outside the box, so to speak, and build something that's going to attract people versus people who are going to run away from.
I agree, Commissioner. I agree wholeheartedly. In closing, are there any comments from anybody? We appreciate everyone. We really appreciate the presentation this morning. It was very enlightening in terms of what we're doing. We just have to keep moving in this direction, in the direction that we're moving in, and come to some kind of consensus here with another month or so about what it's going to look like. Obviously, when our budget time comes up, we're going to have to, begin to bite the bullet and see what we're going to have to do to make all this work, because I think in enhancing the quality of life in the city on a personal level, and I think Commissioner Williams has been beating this drum for about 16 years now, is that everything starts with some sense of decency and some sense of cleanliness. And I think we got to be, back to his point, be very serious about taking this challenge on. And I think we are at this particular time. And I hope at the end of this, we're gonna have some good information. So thank you everyone for your time in closing. Thank you very much, everybody.